Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joins us from around the world. We're so glad you're here. This is Andrew and Renee. Welcome to the STACK series. Today we are exploring polygenic risk scores and the future of personalized genomic medicine.
It's fantastic to be here.
Ow.
This is one of those topics that really feels like we're standing on the edge of a new era in medicine.
It really does. We have this idea that all humans are 99.9% identical. We share the same genetic recipe, so to speak.
Right. And for so long, we focused on that similarity.
But all the action, all the drama, it's all happening in that tiny, tiny remaining fraction, isn't it? That 0.1%.
That's where all the variation is. And that's what we're finally getting the tools to understand. We're moving away from the one gene, one disease idea.
The really obvious stuff.
Exactly. The big, loud signals. Things like Huntington's disease or certain inherited cancers. You have the gene, you very likely get the disease. It's a shout.
A genetic shout, I like that.
But what we're talking about today is different. We're learning to hear the whispers. Millions of tiny genetic variations that, on their own, mean almost nothing.
But when you add them all up.
When you add them all up, that whisper becomes a roar. It becomes a major driver of common diseases like heart disease or diabetes.
And that's the whole idea behind a polygenic risk score, or PRS. It's an attempt to listen to all those whispers at once.
I think a good place to start, maybe, is with an analogy I came across that really made this click for me.
Oh, the suitcase analogy.
Just suitcase analogy, yes.
It's the best one out there, I think. It really captures the core concept of cumulative liability.
So, okay, let's walk through it. Imagine everyone at birth is handed a suitcase. That suitcase represents your genetic risk for a specific illness, let's say heart disease.
Right. It's your inherited predisposition.
And in the old way of thinking, the one gene, one disease model, we were basically looking inside that suitcase for a brick. A big, heavy brick. A single gene mutation, like one for familial hypercholesterolemia, that's a brick. You put that in the suitcase and it's immediately heavy. You don't even need a scale.
You feel it. The risk is obvious. But for most of us, when it comes to heart disease, there is no brick in the suitcase.
No. For the vast majority of people, the suitcase is filled with, well, socks.
Thousands and thousands of socks.
Exactly. And one single sock, which represents one of these tiny genetic variants, a single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP.
SNP. We'll be saying that a lot.
We will. One SNP, one sock, it weighs almost nothing. It has a negligible, almost unmeasurable effect on your biology. It's just noise.
But if your parents happen to pack your suitcase with, say, 10,000 pairs of these tiny socks.
Suddenly, that suitcase is incredibly heavy. It might even be heavier than the one with the single brick.
And a polygenic risk score.
Yeah.
It's the scale.
It's the highly sensitive digital scale that weighs the suitcase. It adds up the tiny, tiny weights of millions of these individual socks to give you a total weight, a total score. It tells you if your genetic burden for that disease is light, average, or dangerously heavy.
And the scale of this is just. It's hard to wrap your head around. The source material said we now have over 70,000 documented associations between these SNPs and various human traits.
That number is just staggering, and it's growing every day. It's the result of really 2 decades of massive international efforts called genome-wide association studies, or GWAS.
GWAS, so that's where they take, thousands of people with the disease, thousands without,
Yeah.
and just scan their entire genomes looking for differences.
Spot on. They're looking for these tiny spelling differences, these SNPs, that show up more often in the group with the disease. It was, for a long time, like looking for a needle in a haystack. But our technology got better, our sample sizes got bigger, and now we have this enormous catalog of risk variants.
Okay, but this is where I want to sort of get into the weeds a bit.
Yeah.
Because it sounds simple on the surface, just count up all the bad spelling variants you have, right?
Yeah, if only. If you just did a simple count, you'd get a number that's pretty much useless. It would be full of redundancies and noise.
Why is that?
It's because a concept called linkage disequilibrium.
Linkage disequilibrium. Okay, that sounds pretty intimidating. Break that down for us.
Think of your DNA less like a string of individual independent letters and more like a freight train with different cars.
Okay.
When you inherit DNA from your parents, it doesn't get shuffled letter by letter. It gets passed down in chunks in these linked blocks, like the cars of the train. So if a particular SNP, variant A, is in a specific car, then variants B, C, and D are probably in that same car right next to it. They travel together.
So they're linked.
They're physically linked on the chromosome. So if you're building a risk score and you count the risk from variant A, and then you also add the risk from D, C, and D.
You're counting the same risk 4 times.
You're cheating. You're massively inflating the score by double or quadruple counting the exact same biological signal. It's like weighing the same sock 4 times because it has 4 different colored stripes.
So that's a huge problem. How do they get around that?
They use a statistical method with a, frankly, very uncatchy name. It's called clumping and thresholding.
Plumping and thresholding. It sounds like something you do in the garden.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Clumping is the process of dealing with that linkage problem. The algorithm looks at that block of linked SNPs, that train car, and it identifies the one SNP that has the strongest statistical link to the disease.
The leader of the pack.
The lead SNP, exactly. It keeps that one and essentially throws away its neighbors for the purpose of the calculation. It declutters the data, so you're only counting each independent signal once.
Okay, that makes sense. You get rid of the echoes. So what's thresholding?
Thresholding is where the art and the science really meet. It's about deciding which SNPs even get to be in the score in the first place. You have to set a statistical significance threshold.
Meaning, how strong the link to the disease has to be.
Precisely. If a variant is only, say, 1% more common in people with heart disease, is that a real signal? Or is it just random statistical noise?
That's a tough call.
It's a huge balancing act. If you set your threshold too high and only include the strongest signals, you miss out on all those whispers. You lose the very polygenic signal you're trying to capture.
You throw out too many of the socks.
Exactly. But if you set the threshold too low, you let in a flood of static and random noise, and your score becomes meaningless. It's like trying to tune an old AM radio to a distant station. You're trying to find that perfect spot where you get the music without all the crackle.
And I imagine modern algorithms are getting much better at finding that sweet spot.
Oh, massively better. The newer methods, like the elastic net modeling they're using in some of the clinical tests we'll talk about, they're much more sophisticated. They can sort of automatically tune that dial to find the optimal combination of SNPs that gives the best predictive power.
So let's talk about that prediction, because this is where I think a lot of the fear and confusion comes in. The difference between relative risk and absolute risk.
This is maybe the single most important concept for a patient to understand.
Right. Because if I get a report back that says my polygenic risk score puts me in the 99th percentile for coronary artery disease, my first thought is, I'm having a heart attack tomorrow.
And that's a completely natural human reaction, but it's a misunderstanding of what that number means. Being in the 99th percentile is a statement of relative risk.
Meaning relative to other people.
Yes. It means if you took 100 people and lined them up by the weight of their genetic suitcase, yours is heavier than 99 of them. Your inherited genetic liability is very high compared to the general population.
But that's not the same as saying my chance of having a heart attack is 99%.
Not at all. Your absolute risk, your actual real-world chance of something happening, depends entirely on the baseline risk of the disease in the population.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's take a very rare disease, something that affects, say, 1 in 100,000 people. If your PRS is in the 99th percentile and it triples your risk, your new absolute risk is 3 in 100,000. It's much higher, relatively speaking, but your absolute chance of getting it is still incredibly, incredibly small.
Okay, I see. But for something like heart disease, the baseline risk is not small.
That's the crucial difference. Heart disease is the #1 killer. The baseline risk is already high. So if you're in the 99th percentile for that, a tripling of your risk is a very, very serious signal. It translates into a significant absolute probability of having an event in your lifetime.
And this gets even more complicated, right? There was this flip-flop phenomenon mentioned in the sources.
Yes, and this is a huge problem. It's a direct consequence of the data bias problem we'll get into later.
The idea that a genetic marker could be bad in one person and good or neutral in another. It seemed to break the rules of biology.
It does seem counterintuitive. It's not that the gene itself is flipping its function. It's that our interpretation of that marker is flawed because of its genomic context, which varies by ancestry.
You mean those blocks of DNA, the train cars we talked about?
Exactly. The size and structure of those inherited blocks are different in different global populations due to their unique histories of migration and population mixing.
So a marker that we flagged as dangerous in a European population might be sitting right next to the actual causative gene in that group.
Correct. But in, say, an individual of African ancestry, the genomic landscape is different. African genomes are generally older and have more genetic diversity, so the blocks tend to be smaller and more shuffled.
So the marker and the actual bad gene might have gotten separated The link is broken.
The link is broken. So our test might see the marker and flag it as high risk, but it's a false alarm because the actual problematic gene isn't there. Or even worse, the reverse could be true. A marker we think is safe is actually linked to a risk variant in that population. That's the flip-flop, and it's a critical flaw we have to fix.
Which is a huge ethical minefield we definitely need to circle back to. But for now, let's look at where this is actually being used. Where is the rubber hitting the road? It seems to be cardiovascular disease.
It's the lead use case, absolutely. And for a few very good reasons.
Oh, really?
One, we have enormous data sets for heart disease, millions of people. Two, it's highly heritable, so we know genetics plays a big role. And three, and this is the most important one, we have effective interventions.
We can actually do something about it.
We can do something. Statins, blood pressure medication, lifestyle changes. The information is actionable.
So today, if I go to my doctor, they plug my numbers into a calculator. The American Heart Association has a new one called the Prevent tool.
Right. It takes your age, your cholesterol, your blood pressure, smoking status, the classic risk factors. And it's a good tool. It has saved a lot of lives.
But it has a blind spot.
A massive one. A recent really important study from a company called Genomics, led by Professor Sir Peter Donnelly, showed this clearly. They took the standard Prevent tool and they added a PRS to it.
And what did they find?
They found a significant improvement in prediction. They identified a whole group of people who are at high risk, but who are completely missed by the current standard of care.
The invisible high risk.
That's the term he used, and it's perfect. This is the core value proposition of PRS in cardiology. Think about a 45-year-old guy. His cholesterol is borderline, but okay. His blood pressure is fine. He doesn't smoke.
He looks healthy on paper.
On paper, the Prevent tool says his 10-year risk is low. The doctor tells him to keep up the good work and sends him home.
But inside his cells, his DNA is a ticking time bomb. His suitcase is packed to the brim with socks.
Exactly. He has a PRS in the top 5%. Genetically, his body is just programmed to develop atherosclerosis. But he is totally invisible to our current medical system until the day he shows up in the emergency room with chest pain. The PRS makes that person visible maybe 20 years before the event.
This isn't just a study anymore. This is happening now. Mass General Brigham, one of the biggest and most respected hospital systems in the U.S., just launched a clinical test based on this.
This is a landmark moment. This isn't a research project that you have to sign up for. This is a test a doctor can order for a patient, and the results go into their medical record.
And it's not just for heart disease, is it?
No, they launched it for a panel of 8 different conditions. It's, let me see, atrial fibrillation, coronary artery disease, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol and lipoprotein A, hypertension, and a couple of others. It's a major step.
And they're using a specific method, this PRSEPs. What's that about?
PRSmix is a smart solution to a practical problem. The problem is that different research groups, using slightly different methods, have developed dozens of different polygenic risk scores for, say, heart disease.
And they don't all give the exact same result.
Right. One might use 1 million S&Ps, another might use 2 million. So which one do you trust? PRSmix basically says, let's not choose. It uses a sophisticated modeling technique to combine multiple different scores into one more stable, more robust metascore. It's like getting a consensus opinion from several experts instead of just one.
And they're basing this on data from the All of Us research program.
Which is key, because that's the NIH's huge initiative to build a more genetically diverse data set. So they are trying to address the ancestry problem from the ground up.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising. Find the invisible people, give them preventative medicine, save lives. But I have to be the skeptic here, because another major study came out that threw a bit of cold water on the genetics-only approach.
You're talking about the Is Gut et al. Study. Yes, this is the necessary reality check. It's the counterpoint to the hype.
It was basically a head-to-head battle, right? Genetics versus a patient's medical history.
It was a battle of the data sets. They wanted to see what was better at predicting who would have a heart attack. In one corner, you have the shiny, new, high-tech polygenic risk score.
And in the other corner, the old, dusty electronic health record, the EHR.
Precisely. They built and compared 3 different predictive models. Model 1 was just the PRS. Model 2, which they called NG1 for non-genetic one, was just the basic stuff age, BMI, smoking status.
The stuff your doctor asks you about.
Right. And Model 3 was the heavyweight. They called it NG2. This was a deep learning AI model that was allowed to analyze the entire comprehensive medical history of a patient. Every diagnosis code, every lab result, every prescription, every doctor's visit.
What happened?
Well, it was a bit of a humbling result for the genetics first crowd. They found that the PRS, when used by itself, provided minimal, almost negligible predictive value over and above the simple, basic risk factors.
So knowing my DNA score for heart attack risk wasn't much better than just knowing my age and my BMI.
In terms of overall accuracy, no. The AUC, which is a measure of predictive accuracy, only improved by about 0.01. It was a tiny bump. But the AI that read the deep medical history, NG2, it blew the other models out of the water.
Which leads us to this fascinating, almost sci-fi mystery from the study, the mystery of Feature 235.
Feature 235. It sounds like something out of a spy movie, doesn't it? The researchers let the AI loose on the data, and the AI reported back that this one thing, this feature 235, was the single most important predictor of a future heart attack.
More important than a person's genetics.
More important than their PRS, more important than their cholesterol levels. This one feature held the most predictive power.
So what was it? What is Feature 235?
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't one single thing. When the researchers reverse engineered it, they found it was a complex cluster of diagnostic codes that the AI had learned to group together.
And what was in the cluster?
Some of it was what you'd expect, codes for lipid disorders, for example. But it also included codes for things that seem, on the surface, completely unrelated to the heart. Things like asthma, and arthrosis, which is degenerative joint disease. And the most surprising one of all, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that having acid reflux is a better predictor of a heart attack than having a high-risk genome? How's that even possible?
The AI doesn't give you a memo explaining its reasoning, but we can make some pretty educated guesses. And this is where it gets really interesting. What do asthma, arthritis, and heart disease all have in common?
Inflammation.
Inflammation. The AI wasn't just seeing acid reflux. It was likely seeing a signature of chronic systemic inflammation manifesting in different parts of the body. A human doctor might see three separate, unrelated problems, but the AI saw one unified pattern of a body in an inflammatory state, which is a massive driver of arterial plaque.
So it's finding these hidden connections between different conditions.
Exactly. Or think about the acid reflux in another way. What do millions of people take for it? Proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. There's some emerging, though not yet conclusive, research suggesting that long-term use of these drugs might impact the health of the lining of our blood vessels. The AI might be picking up on a subtle signal from a medication side effect that we are only just beginning to investigate.
It's incredible. So the AI is reading the fingerprints that the disease process is already leaving in the body.
Yes. And those fingerprints, the actual manifestation of the disease, turn out to be a stronger predictor than the genetic blueprint. The blueprint is just a probability. The medical record is what's actually happening.
So does this mean PRS is a bust? Should we just forget the DNA test and build better AI to read our existing files?
No, and this is the really critical nuance of that study. It's not an either-or. The answer comes down to the difference between two statistical concepts: precision and recall.
Okay, break those down for us.
Precision asks the question, of all the people I predicted would have a heart attack, how many actually did? It's about not having false alarms. High precision means when you point your finger and say you're sick, you're usually right.
And recall.
Recall asks a different question. Of all the people who actually had a heart attack, how many did my test successfully find? It's about not missing anyone. High recall means you cast a wide net and you catch all the sick people.
Okay, so precision is the sniper. Recall is the dragnet.
Perfect analogy. And what the ISCIT study found was that while adding the PRS didn't improve precision much, it significantly improved recall. It helped find more of the people who were truly at risk, even if it meant raising a few more false alarms along the way.
I see. That helps you find the invisible Steves we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Steve, our 45-year-old healthy guy, has no medical history. His EHR is empty. The AI has nothing to read. The only clue that he's in danger is in his DNA. PRS is the only tool we have to catch him before the disease starts leaving those fingerprints in his file.
So the conclusion isn't genetics versus medical history?
No. The conclusion is that the best possible model, the holy grail, is a multimodal neural network. You combine all three streams of data: basic risk factors, the deep AI analysis of the medical history, and the foundational polygenic risk score. The combination is more powerful than any single part on its own.
Okay, so we established we do need the genetics. It's a key piece of the puzzle, which means we have to confront the elephant in the room.
The ancestry gap.
It's a really stark problem. The source material states that over 80% of the participants in the big GW studies, the studies used to build these scores, are of European ancestry.
It's an indictment of how we've conducted genomic research for the last 20 years. It's a statistical and an ethical failure.
I mean, 80%. When you think about the world's population, people of European descent are a minority.
And yet, our library of genomic knowledge is overwhelmingly written by and about them.
So what happens in the real world when a doctor orders one of these tests for a patient who is Black or Hispanic or Asian?
The test doesn't work as well. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. The papers use phrases like suboptimal precision and poor transferability. What that means in plain English is that for many non-European populations, the score can be misleading or flat out wrong.
So if we roll this out universally, right now, today, we are literally making health disparities worse.
You're exacerbating them. It's a mechanism for baking inequality directly into our healthcare algorithms. A white patient at high risk gets an accurate score and a warning to start a statin. A Black patient with the exact same level of biological risk might get a score that comes back low or average because the test can't properly read their genetic signals.
So they don't get the statin.
They don't get the intervention,
No.
and they end up having the preventable heart attack. It's an unacceptable outcome.
So how do we fix this? We can't just wait another 20 years to redo all the research.
We can't. So there's a two-pronged approach happening right now. The first and most important is we need better, more diverse data. Period.
That's the All of Us program.
That's the All of Us program. It's a massive billion-dollar effort by the NIH to sequence the genomes of at least 1 million Americans with a specific mandate to over-recruit from communities that have been historically underrepresented in biomedical research. That's the long-term fix.
And this is a short-term fix.
Yeah.
The patch.
The short-term fix is algorithmic. There are some really clever new methods being developed. One is called EEPRS.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It stands for EHR Embedding Enhanced PRS.
Okay.
The basic idea is this. The algorithm knows that the genetic part of the score is blurry for a non-European patient because of the data gap. So it compensates by leaning more heavily on the data from their electronic health record.
So it's using the feature 235 type of information, the real-world symptoms, to help calibrate and correct the fuzzy genetic score.
You got it. It uses the phenotype, what's actually happening in the body, to anchor the genotype, the genetic prediction. It's a statistical patch, but studies show it can significantly improve the accuracy of these scores for minority populations while we wait for the better genetic data to arrive.
So there are people actively working on making the scores more equitable.
Very actively. Other groups like the Emerge Network are also developing frameworks for calibrating scores based on a person's genetic ancestry, so that a score of, say, 75 means the same level of absolute risk whether you're of Asian, African, or European descent.
That's good to hear. I want to shift gears a little bit, away from the heart and towards another major area where PRS is poised to make a huge impact. Breast cancer.
Yes. Outside of cardiology, this is probably the most advanced application of PRS that's getting ready for clinical prime time.
Right now, our approach to breast cancer screening is, well, it's pretty blunt, isn't it? It's based on one thing, age.
It's entirely age-based. You turn 40 or maybe 50 and you start getting mammograms. That's the protocol. It treats every single 50-year-old woman as if her risk is identical.
And we know that's just not true.
We know it's not. Some women at 50 have a lifetime risk that's less than 5%. Others, due to genetics and family history, might be walking around with a 30% risk. Screening them in the exact same way is inefficient at best and dangerous at worst.
So PRS allows us to move from age-based screening to risk-based screening.
To personalized, risk-stratified screening. Yes. If a woman's PRS is very high, maybe she doesn't wait until she's 40. Maybe she starts mammograms at 30. Maybe she alternates with breast MRIs, which are more sensitive, especially for women with dense breast tissue.
And if her risk is very low?
If her risk is very low, maybe she can screen less frequently, avoiding the radiation exposure, cost, and anxiety of annual screening. It's about tailoring the intensity of surveillance to the magnitude of the risk.
There's a specific model for breast cancer risk that was mentioned, the Bodicea model.
Yes, Bodicea. It's a powerhouse of a model.
What does it take into account?
It's truly multimodal. It integrates the PRS, of course, but it also incorporates a very detailed family history, not just did your mother have cancer, but at what age, what type, and so on. It includes results from any prior biopsies. And crucially, it also includes mammographic density as a risk factor.
And it synthesizes all of that into one personalized risk curve over time.
Exactly. But what's really powerful about the breast cancer PRS is that it can start to predict subtypes.
Meaning not just if you get cancer, but what kind of cancer.
Precisely. Breast cancer isn't a single disease. There's estrogen receptor positive, ER negative, triple negative. They all behave differently and respond to different treatments and preventative strategies.
So if you know you have a high genetic risk specifically for ER-positive cancer,
Then a preventative drug like tamoxifen, which blocks estrogen's effects, might be a very effective strategy for you. But if your genetic risk is for ER-negative cancer, tamoxifen would be all side effects with zero benefit. The PRS helps guide that decision. That's true precision prevention.
but there's a really interesting wrinkle with a model like BOACIA. It's not a one-and-done test.
No, and this is a key point that I think is often missed. We think of our genome as static, and it is. Your DNA sequence doesn't change. But your risk assessment is dynamic. It's a living thing.
How so?
Okay, let's say a woman gets her score calculated at age 30 and her risk is moderate. But then at age 35, her older sister is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Ah, a new piece of information.
A huge new piece of information. The family history input to the BOACIA model has now changed dramatically. Her PRS is the same, but her overall calculated risk just went way up. The entire assessment needs to be rerun.
Or if she has a biopsy that comes back showing a precancerous lesion.
Same thing. That's a new variable. The model has to be updated. Your risk assessment is not a static photograph. It's a dynamic video that has to be continuously updated with new life events.
It's basically a living document inside your medical record.
It should be. But that creates an enormous logistical and computational challenge for our current healthcare system.
Which is the perfect segue to the future. How does a busy primary care doctor with maybe 15 minutes per patient possibly manage a living risk score for hundreds of patients?
They can't. A human being cannot keep track of that. This is where AI and the vision of the digital twin come into play.
The digital twin. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, but it's a concept being seriously pursued by places like Verily, which is Google's life sciences arm. The goal is to create a high-fidelity virtual simulation of a patient that lives in the cloud.
A digital replica of me.
A digital replica of you. It would contain your genome, your full medical history, all your lab results, real-time data from your smartwatch or wearable sensors, everything.
And the purpose of this twin is to run simulations.
To run what-if scenarios, you can use generative AI to ask the twin, what is the likely impact on this person's 10-year heart disease risk if they start taking a statin versus if they adopt a Mediterranean diet? The AI could model and compare those future health trajectories.
That's the grand vision. But let's talk about the practical reality today. The reality today is a TDF report.
The PDF is the enemy of progress. It's a data prison. A doctor gets a 15-page PDF with a genetic test result. They might scan it, maybe save it to the patient's chart, and then it's forgotten. It's not computable. The system can't read it or act on it.
So how do we get the data out of PDF jail?
It has to be transmitted as discrete data. This is where platforms like the Epic Aura network are coming in. Epic is the software that runs a huge percentage of hospitals in the U.S.
So instead of a document, the system gets the raw numbers.
The system gets the raw numbers. It gets the PRS value, the specific gene variants, directly into its database. It understands what it means.
And once the system knows my PRS,
then it can provide real-time clinical decision support. It can power the pop-up alert.
every doctor's favorite thing that
They hate them, I know. Alert fatigue is a serious problem. But imagine a useful pop-up. A doctor is about to prescribe a common blood thinner. The system knows the patient has a high PRS for a variant that affects how they metabolize that drug.
So it flashes a warning.
It pops up and says, warning, this patient is a poor metabolizer. Standard dose may lead to bleeding. Consider an alternative drug or a lower dose. That's not an annoyance. That's preventing a catastrophic adverse event. But it only works if the data is integrated seamlessly into the doctor's workflow.
We're getting close to the end, but there are a couple of big real-world hurdles we have to touch on. First, the money. Who pays for this?
The trillion-dollar question. Right now, most of this testing is either done in a research setting or it's paid for out of pocket by the patient.
So insurance isn't covering it yet.
For the most part, no. They're stuck in what's called the clinical utility trap. They'll say, okay, we agree the score predicts risk, That's proven. But you haven't proven that knowing the risk actually changes outcomes or saves us money in the long run.
And to prove that, you need these huge, decade-long randomized controlled trials.
Exactly. So we're in this limbo where the technology is ready, but the reimbursement infrastructure isn't, which immediately creates a two-tiered system of care. If you have a few $100s and you know where to go, you can get access to this futuristic preventative medicine. If you don't, you get the standard of care.
And the last piece is the human one, the psychological side of this. What does it mean to be a previvor?
That's such a powerful term, a previvor. Someone who is surviving a predisposition to a disease they don't have yet. Knowing you carry a high genetic risk it's a heavy burden.
I can only imagine. Getting that report back must be a life-altering moment.
It can be. It can trigger profound anxiety, fear, even depression. And that's why the principle of actionability is so critical. As a community, we have to be very careful not to test for risks where there's nothing to be done.
Like getting a high PRS for Alzheimer's disease today.
Exactly. When we have no effective cure and very limited preventative strategies, giving someone that information could be seen as simply inflicting psychological trauma. But for heart disease, for breast cancer, we have a whole toolkit of interventions. The information is empowering because it's actionable.
Which brings me back to the suitcase. I feel like we should end there. We've spent this whole time talking about the weight of the suitcase, the genetics.
Nature.
Right, nature. But we haven't talked as much about the person who has to carry it.
Nurture. The other half of the equation.
Because the PRS, the contents of that suitcase, you get that at birth. You can't change it. You can't take the socks out.
No, you are stuck with the suitcase you're given.
You can go to the gym. You can build up your strength. And that strength, that's your lifestyle, your diet, your exercise, how you manage stress, whether you smoke.
That is the perfect way to frame it. And the data on this is crystal clear and incredibly hopeful. Even for individuals in the top 1% of genetic risk for heart disease, people with the absolute heaviest suitcases, a healthy lifestyle can cut their risk of having a heart attack nearly in half.
So you can effectively overpower your genetic disadvantage.
You can neutralize a significant portion of it. Genetics is not destiny. The old saying holds true. Genetics loads the gun, but environment and lifestyle pull the trigger.
Or to stick with our analogy,
Yeah.
the genetics determines the weight of the load, but your choices determine how strong you are. And a strong person can carry a heavy suitcase for a very long time.
And that's the real promise here. The score isn't a sentence. It's an instruction manual. It tells you just how important it is for you personally to build that strength. It transforms those scary, unknown whispers into a clear, actionable plan.
Before we wrap up, thank you to all our partners, sponsors, and scholars who made this podcast and the research possible. We're truly grateful for your support.
And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow Stack Studios for more informative content and support us on Patreon.
Until next time. Stay curious, keep learning, and let the search for wisdom guide you forward. Have a great day.